It's a privilege to be with you today. My name is Juan Zarate. I want to thank you all for inviting me to offer a few remarks. I'm sorry I can't be with you in Seoul to be joined at such a great conference, but I want to thank President Park and the entire HAREX UBPay platform team for inviting me to speak today. I will be in Seoul at some point. Unfortunately, I couldn't be with you today. I also want to thank our partners at McClarty Associates, in particular Ambassador Tom Hubbard. We've been fortunate through K2 Integrity and now our company Consilient to be partnered with HAREX UBPay platform and McClarty Associates for several years in partnership. And I want to thank our partners for their work and their trust and confidence. I want to talk to you today about my passion and commitment to what we call federated machine learning, what President Park and his team call AI sharing. This is a deep passion of mine, and I've become an evangelist for this technology. And I want to explain why and why this is so important to the work that we do at our firm at K2 Integrity and at Consilient for purposes of preventing financial crime and ensuring financial integrity for the global financial system. In 2009, when I left the White House, where I was the Deputy National Security Advisor for combating terrorism for President George W. Bush, I left in search of a technology that would allow not just the U.S. financial system, but the global financial system to control and discover and manage financial crime risk more efficiently and effectively. I knew from my days at the U.S. Treasury as Assistant Secretary that the current system for managing illicit finance, managing for anti-money laundering, for fraud, for sanctions and sanctions evasion was imperfect, was not fit for purpose. In part because what we were asking that system to do was very different from how it was designed. In the 1970s and 80s, the anti-money laundering system was really built as a follow the money kind of system, as a system to aid investigators and prosecutors in finding dirty money and chasing it down and holding those engaged in money laundering or financial crimes to account. By design, that pre-9/11 system was very reactive, was dependent on the sharing of information from government, and very much relied on siloed systems to engage in risk management. In the post-September 11, 2001 environment, we had asked the system to do something altogether different, in part to prevent financial crime from happening to begin with. We asked the private sector to be guardians at the gate of the financial system to prevent illicit capital, terrorist financing, proliferation finance, corruption, proceeds of financial crimes from entering the financial system. And we were asking the banks and those that were subject to regulation to be much more proactive and preventative in terms of how they would risk manage for financial crime. Well, when I left government in 2009, I knew that the system that was in place was still analog, was still very much of the 1970s, 1980s model. It was very reactive and wasn't established to help prevent financial crime, to do so systemically, and frankly, to discover risk proactively using data creatively. And that's then how I came upon federated machine learning, what our friends at HAREX call AI sharing, for purposes of financial crime risk management. And in doing so, I helped co-found a company called Consilient, which is the first company in the world devoted to the application of federated machine learning for purposes of preventing financial crime. The mission of that company is to use this technology to transform how we prevent financial crime from happening on a global basis. In this regard, the current illicit finance system is not fit for purpose, as I said. It's highly inefficient. We know that over 97, even 98% of current transaction monitoring systems trying to monitor where illicit finance is happening in payment corridors, ecosystems within banks is throwing off 97, 98% false positives. So that means most institutions are spending the vast majority of their time chasing things that don't matter and aren't real. We know that the system is not wholly effective. We know that billions of dollars of illicit finance is entering and traversing the international financial system every year. And at best, we're often left chasing the dirty money, chasing the actors through the various corridors of payments and through institutions and across jurisdictions. And we know that the expectations for those regulated institutions like banks, payment service providers, even crypto virtual asset service providers are only growing. The regulatory attention and requirements are that you know your customer deeply. You understand your counterparty risk. There's a deep understanding of ultimate beneficial ownership. There's a sense of understanding source of wealth and source of funds. And there's a requirement that you begin not only to understand your customers and clients, but that you are constantly assessing and looking at the transactional risk tied to your client base and your products and your jurisdictional exposure. And so those expectations are only growing, with billions of dollars of fines issued against financial institutions and a regulatory expectation around the world for greater awareness and transparency when it comes to dealing with financial criminal activity. All of this is happening in a data landscape that's more complicated. The current paradigm, of course, is that to have enterprise-wide risk management, you have to have a collective common view of the data. So you have to have a common data lake or data source or golden client source of information around which you can build your analysis and your risk management tools and controls. The problem, of course, is there's much more data out there. Data is increasing exponentially, but insights are not. Data is hard and heavy to move. We know that there are huge concerns around personal identifier information and the privacy and security attached to personal data. And of course, we know that jurisdictions around the world are getting more and more sensitive about the movement of their citizens' data outside their borders. The movement toward data localization laws are increasing. And of course, we have the trajectory of the payment system, which is more and more disintermediated, less centralized, more federated. And with the advent of crypto and crypto payments and crypto assets, a much more decentralized DeFi world where knowing where a payment begins and how it ends is harder and harder to discover. So it's in that context that federated machine learning and AI sharing is a fascinating, if not elegant, solution to the numerous problems that we face. And of course, what you have with federated machine learning or AI sharing is the movement of analytics instead of the movement of data, the extraction of insights and not actual data or personal identifier information. And with the application of federated machine learning, then the promise of not just greater efficiency, but the discovery of new risks based on behavioral analysis and machine learning to understand where there are pockets of risk and suspect behavior before the traditional rules will find it and before the human investigators can chase it. And so this is the excitement of this technology. And so when I went in search of technology leaving the White House, I eventually came upon this technology, a group of scientists, data scientists like Gary Schiffman, the co-founder of Consilient, who are working on the use of this technology in different ways. Companies like Intel that were looking at the use of federated machine learning for confidential computing and finding ways of securing the application and the deployment of federated machine learning models and ecosystems. And finally, HAREX UBPay platform, which is thinking creatively about how to use AI sharing to meet their customer needs and demands and to understand customer behavior. And it's in that context that Consilient is a partner to HAREX and wants to find a way of being a foundational component to the HAREX ecosystem, the UBPay platform ecosystem, but other ecosystems within South Korea, between South Korea and other jurisdictions and economies, and certainly within and between enterprises. And the importance of this is the discovery of unseen risk or new risk that's important to discover, the potential for collaboration, shared risks, shared insights, shared costs, and the ability to rethink what information sharing itself means. There is the possibility to not only change the paradigm from trying to collect all the data in one place, but to use data and to interrogate it where it resides in situ to gain new insights. So that what we're talking about with information sharing, whether it's within an enterprise, between enterprises, with government and the private sector, is a much more dynamic way of thinking about sharing insights through the movement of the algorithms and the analysis provided for by the machine learning, as opposed to classic movement of data, which is very hard to do and often very sensitive and impossible to do. A final point, and this is why I am so excited as a former government official and now as a private sector partner and actor and co-founder of Consilient. We think this technology, and certainly what we're trying to do at Consilient, solves 5 fundamental policy and regulatory and market demands all at once. It helps solve for the inefficiency of the system, less false positives, more focus on financial criminal behavior that actually matters. It gets at the effectiveness of the system. We are now trying to discover proactively where risk sits, as opposed to waiting until it happens and then chasing it down years later. It solves the issue of data security and privacy, which is more and more at the fore of concerns of customers that don't want their data misused or moved or analyzed in ways that are uncomfortable. With the ability to interrogate data without extracting the data, you solve that problem quite elegantly. And it solves the issue of data localization as countries or jurisdictions demand that data not leave their borders. You can begin to then construct a federated model, a network model that doesn't rely on data in one country or another or is restricted by those laws, but instead the technology enables the multi-jurisdictional insights that come from the application of federated machine learning. And last but certainly not least, and critical as we think about what compliance in the digital payment, digital asset domain looks like, in a more disintermediated and decentralized financial system, with the growth of payment platforms like UBPay platform, with the emergence of virtual asset service providers, and as the strong survive this current crypto blizzard, there will be a need for new technologies and new approaches to allow for compliance risk management in a decentralized financial world. That's exactly what federated machine learning allows for. It's what AI sharing holds the promise of, and it's why the conference you're at is so interesting and important. And again, I want to thank President Park for the invitation to be with you. I hope you feel and understand my passion for this technology and why I've invested so much time, energy, capital into working on this for Consilient, and why we are going to be partnering with institutions around the world, starting there in Seoul, with HAREX, UBPay platform, and authorities to bring this vision of a much more effective, efficient, secure financial system to life, using new technologies that solve those hard problems in an elegant way. I want to thank you again. I hope you all have a great conference, and I wish you all the best. Goodbye.